Good morning and good evening. My name is Aurélien Lorange. Together with my colleagues from the Corax Foundation, we are organizing a day 3 match in the group phase. We are almost at the end of the group phase, and in the group H, there are two teams who are debating against each other on a topic which is different than the two first matches they already got. And this time it will be connected to trade law. So this is the University of Malaya in Malaysia and the University of Maryland in the United States of America. So to introduce, of course, the match, and especially the participants to this match, I give the floor to my colleague, Miss Kayalal.
Okay. Greetings to all, and congratulations on making it to day 3 of the competition. The topic for this match is trade law should recognize and prioritize the protection of biodiversity over economic gains. And debating this topic will be the University of Malaya from Malaysia and the University of Maryland from the United States of America. So before we find out the positions of the debate, we will first learn more about the participants. So starting off with the University of Malaya, could we have Mr. Singh, please?
Hi guys, my name is Pavandeep Singh, third year law student. Good luck for the round.
Okay, thank you so much. From the University of Maryland, could we have Mr. Hale?
Hi everybody, my name is Josh. I'm a second year law student here at the University of Maryland, and really excited to participate in this debate.
Thank you so much. Could we have Mr. Chin Yi Wei?
Hi, good day everyone. My name is Kenneth. I'm a third year law student from the University of Malaya, and good luck for the round.
Thank you. Miss Liang from the University of Maryland.
Hi everyone, my name is Amanda. I'm currently a first-year Juris Doctor candidate at the University of Maryland. Good to meet you.
Thank you. And Mr. Nathan from the University of Malaya, please.
Hello everyone, Tivar here. I'm currently a third year law student. Very happy to be here. Good luck for the round.
Awesome. And could we have Mr. Giver from the University of Maryland?
Hi everyone. I'm a first year law student at the University of Maryland. My name is Gabe. It's really nice to meet you all.
Thank you so much. We'd also like to give a shout out to the judges. So from the University of Malaya, we have Dr. Najwa Rosley, and from the University of Maryland, we have Miss Leanna Feinleb, who is present on the call, and Professor Peter Donchin. If the coach from University of Maryland, Miss Leanna, could please introduce herself. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Leanna Feinlieb. I'm a second year law student here at University of Maryland. Also very excited to witness a very exciting debate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the participants and coaches, and now if I could pass the floor back to Professor Lorange, who will start the positions, please.
Yes, thank you very much. So I share my screen, so we see the wheel for the randomizer, and as well yes, double flags and logos of your institutions. We send greetings as well to the judge who are watching the match or re-watching the match. So many thanks for your time. So for this match, as you can see, there are two chances, one chance to be in favor, one chance to be against. The team will be in favor, will be starting the first introduction. So activate the randomizer. So that will be the University of Malaya will be in favor of the motion and will be starting the first introduction, and as a consequence that will be the University of Maryland will be against the motion. So concretely it means that the University of Malaya will defend the position that trade law should recognize and prioritize the protection of biodiversity over economic gains, while the University of Maryland will defend the position that trade law should not recognize and not prioritize the protection of biodiversity over economic gains. So now the two teams will have 5 minutes to review their notes, and then we'll hear the introduction by the Malaysian team.
Well, thank you, everyone. The time for your final preparation is now over. We'll be starting with opening statements. Of course, the team with the position in favor will start. Just a short reminder for the duration of the debate. It is recommended that you keep the call in gallery view so you can see the indications from our timekeepers. So in this case, it will be from the video stream of Ms. Lal. So when you see yellow card, it indicates you have 30 seconds left. When you see a red card, it indicates your time is up and it's not recommended to start new sentences. Thus, on the topic of trade law should recognize and prioritize the protection of biodiversity over economic gains, University of Malaya, you have 4 minutes for your opening statement.
All right, thank you very much. Can I confirm that I'm audible?
You are.
All right, good. Starting my speech or my opening statement in 3, 2. A very good day, we think. We think protection of biodiversity is important. Moving straight into my speech with 2 questions by way of framing. Firstly, what is the status quo of trade law and other existing protection on biodiversity? We think there is increasing intersectionality between trade law and environmental law. Many trade agreements now include provisions related to environmental protection, recognizing the need to balance trade liberalization with environmental sustainability. This means that the nature of trade should not significantly harm the environment to a point beyond remedy. This is then codified specifically in Article 20 of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, the GATT, in which Article 20b provides that we allow countries to implement measures necessary to protect human, animal, and plant life. Article 20g, in which we state that we allow measures relating to the conservation of exhaustible natural resources. This layer on framing indicates to you that the most important aspect of the environment are protected, but there is a problem with enforcement, which brings me to the second question in framing. Therefore, what does recognition and protection look like? By virtue of this motion, this recognition and protection that happens on a national level, which there is regional enforcement and protection. This looks like ratification and local codification of conventions of environmental protection and further control over activities that involve land clearance, logging, hunting, or poaching. This is important for 2 main reasons. Firstly, that local protection means it is easier for states to have control and government oversight. This means there are likely going to be regional ministries and organizations that overlook the environment, which ensures that protection is deserved. But secondly, the states are able to better assess the resources that they have and are able to better strike a balance between making a profit and ensuring that their key green sectors are maintained. This then is in line with the integration of protecting SDG 14 and 15 through the UN Convention to combat desertification. This means adaptation into local framework is extremely possible, but also extremely feasible. I've proved to you why local and regional codification and ratification can happen. What then is the argument moving into today? Firstly, in terms of the protection of ecosystems, I'll prove to you in this argument what are the damages of ecosystem caused by trade and why is protection then necessary. 2 main harms. Firstly, in terms of habitat destruction, we think this is the most common form of destruction by elitists and developers in order to urbanize areas, in which trade-related activities like agriculture, mining, infrastructure oftentimes lead to fragmentation of ecosystem, making it extremely difficult for wildlife to survive. 2 impacts. Firstly, in terms of the harms towards wildlife, we think this is irrecoverable. Most of the time, this is the very reason why they're labeled as endangered in the first place. This is highlighted in the UN's Policy Biodiversity Trade Policy Primer document, in which there's a 50% decline in the European butterfly population, but also a 21% decline of deep forest elephants and commonly poached animals. Secondly, in terms of indigenous people, then there's a huge amount of displacement which forces them to relocate. This is unjust encroachment of indigenous land, which are oftentimes justified by state in order to make a profit, but secondly, because of the lack of enforcement. We think that these parties then deserve specific protection from the harms of development and trade. Therefore, the only way to allocate protection is by recognizing them in that these areas are key and crucial in the first place. Legal recognition provides a formal acknowledgement of their value and the rights of biodiversity, making it possible then to impose sanctions onto activities that threaten them. 3 international policies. Firstly, the International Labour Organization Convention number 916, which allows for this protection. Secondly, the Convention on Biological Diversity, the CBD, particularly through the Nagoya Protocol, which provides for benefit sharing, which allows them the specific rights. But thirdly, in the case of the ICJ of the land and maritime boundary between Cameroon and Nigeria, this was held that the countries then can ratify parts of the treaty rather than the whole treaty to preserve certain environmental areas. meaning regional ratification is important in order to prevent this harm, but also that is layer-proof the feasibility and implementation. Why then can this be solved by ratification through protectionary treaties and enforcement? This is illustrated through the CITES convention that banned the trade of rhinos and tigers. And subsequently, when US sanctioned China on undermining this treaty, China followed up with a ban on tiger bones and bear meat. We think this is particularly important because ratification of treaties provide change. Thank you.
Very much. We'll now hear the opening statement for the against position. University of Maryland, you two have 4 minutes.
And can I just confirm that everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Great. According to a 2019 report from the UN's Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, more than 1 million species face extinction in the coming decades. The destruction of our planet's biodiversity is an incredibly serious threat to ecosystems, food security, and global economic stability by disrupting essential services like pollination, water purification, and climate regulation, ultimately endangering human livelihoods and well-being. We agree with the pro side that humans need to fundamentally shift our priorities when it comes to biodiversity. However, prioritizing the protection of biodiversity over economic gains in trade law is not the best way to ensure that life on our planet continues to thrive. Our argument has 2 key premises. First, that prioritizing biodiversity over economic gains in trade law would only reinforce green colonialism and prevent nations in the global south from asserting their own autonomy, thus reinforcing a dynamic that has resulted in various other harms to both people and the environment. And second, we contend that prioritizing economic gains is necessary to protect Earth's biodiversity. By prioritizing biodiversity over economic prosperity, the pro side advocates for a trade law regime that reinforces neo-colonial hierarchies and takes power away from low-income countries. Despite state sovereignty being a core tenet of international law, states across the global south have struggled against trade policies that deprive low-income countries of their autonomy over their own natural resources. We agree that the status quo is insufficient to combat the current biodiversity crisis, but the pro side proposal amounts to green imperialism that would reinforce these harmful power dynamics. Writing for the Journal of Labor and Society in 2024, Alejandro Pedregal Veodres and Nemanja Lukic discussed how wealthy countries enact environmental policies that shift the burden onto poorer countries, forcing them to provide resources to wealthy countries, deal with pollution, and restrict economic growth. Simply put, this green imperialism allows wealthy states to exploit poorer countries under the guise of protecting the environment. These economic policies result in low-income states losing sovereignty over their own resources, which directly contravenes the UN General Charter of 1962, and often results in nefarious outcomes like forcing indigenous people off of their land. For example, UN-funded biodiversity conservation initiatives in Kenya resulted in more than 13,000 Sengwer Kenyans being forced off their ancestral land in 2013. This is an example of green colonialist policy that is imposed on a lower middle income country that resulted in ethnic cleansing. Even more troubling is that the Sengwer people themselves have been practicing sustainable conservation for centuries, proving that empowering local communities is more effective than imposing a one-size-fits-all approach on the global south that often results in serious harm against minority groups in the name of prioritizing biodiversity. Additionally, we argue that prioritizing economics and trade law is necessary to combat the biodiversity crisis. To see what the actual results of the policy the pro side is advocating for, let's look at the US v. EU biotech products case in the WTO. Concerned about protecting biodiversity and without scientific consensus, the EU failed to approve any new genetically modified foods or crops between 1998 and 2004. As a result, several countries experiencing famine brought a claim to the WTO because they were unable to import enough food to feed their people. Additionally, a study by Shayan Khan Kakar and other experts analyzed the economic policies of 87 developing nations and found a positive relationship between economic development and biodiversity protection. Smart economic investments in technology, they found, actually have the power to reverse biodiversity loss. The idea that countries must choose between prioritizing economics and protecting biodiversity is a false choice that's not reflected in the data. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have now heard the opening statements from both sides of the argument. We'll now proceed to the rebuttals. For the first rebuttal, University of Malaya, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, am I visible and audible?
Yes.
All right, thanks. Give me a sec. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Insofar as opposition doesn't prove to us any material change or any level of benefit towards the vulnerable actors they're talking about, I don't think they can take this debate just by explaining to you why vulnerable countries are so important. We in Malaysia are also part of a developing country, and I think we'll dislodge the biggest push of self-opposition from the start of this response speech. They talk to us about how they are reinforcing green colonialism through the push of trade law having biodiversity. But I don't think this happens on principle already because number one, third world countries have sovereignty, third world countries have complete control over their resources. Number two, when talking about how trade law imposes acts to be done by the developing countries on the same level as the developed nations, we disprove this by explaining to you that through the case of Cameroon and Nigeria in the ICJ, countries which are developing or third world nations can opt into certain part of treaties and reserve the rest. This means that even in the worst case scenario, Judge, and even if you buy everything opposition talks to you about, how developing nations wouldn't have the same level of access or capability or economic capacity to adhere to all these treaties, we still explain to you that there is precedence showing you that these countries can either A, choose and reserve these laws, or B, just ratify it and choose laws which they can actively opt into and aim to opt into the rest. What is this? Why is it so important? Because this debate is a priority debate, Judge. It's important to realize that we are not going to remove economic gains whatsoever. We're just going to have a shift of priority. When we shift this priority, that's the only way we can solve every harm which exists from international trade directly towards environmental law. Preemptively, directly towards the environment. Preemptively, if you want to talk about environmental law also, we explain to you that this specific policy can pass only to solve all issues regarding trade law and its specific harms towards the environment. When we have this policy passed, that's when we see a better world on side of proposition. Thank you.
Thank you. For the first rebuttal of the against position, University of Maryland, you have 2 minutes.
I thank the previous speaker for their speech. Honorable panel, the proposition forgets that there is often a tension between a government and its people. There is often a tension between a local government or even a national government, which is their mechanism for solving this problem that they have hand-waved into the round without describing you what policies should be implemented, what the power balances should be, right? And the people that they're actually living in that place. Now, when we think about the balkanization of nations or even continents such as Africa, for example, where lines were arbitrarily carved, we have to recognize that ethnic groups and ethnic enclaves live in places for a very, very long time and now are suddenly separated by these national bounds. There are two examples here that are really, really pertinent, right? So they make this argument that we don't access any of our harms, but in fact we do. Our harms are in fact the same as their harms, and they don't even solve either. So when we say that the proposition is forgetting that the tension between a government and its people, we have to recognize the harms in their side are quite frankly that when faced with UN pressures, when faced with this idea that, we should prioritize biodiversity over literally anything else, over the sovereignty of our people, of course, the national government of a country that is trying to curry favor in the international realm will indeed choose the international realm, will choose Western powers, will choose the global north over the indigenous people that they themselves are already oppressing. Two examples here. First, in Tanzania, the Maasai people have lived on a piece of land in the government, in the Ngorongoro conservation area for generations. A woman told them that the grazing land was used by the Maasai was taken by the government, so any cows that remained grew too skinny to produce milk, which is a staple crop or a staple food for the indigenous people and a product they sell to buy other foods. This is incredibly important. The government defended the relocation in the past, but because of the UNESCO World Heritage Site designation, because of the prioritization of conservation, those people who have lived there for a very long time were forced to relocate to a better place. This is not just. Thank you.
Thank you. For the second rebuttal in favor, University of Malaya, you have 2 minutes.
All right. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. My learned friend explains to us that we do not access our harms either, or at best, we are symmetrical. Let me disprove this. Because on the first level, when we talk about this policy being passed, right, Judge, trade law recognizing and prioritizing biodiversity, that means that now you have an avenue where these countries can actually opt into part of these treaties. This means on our side of the house, we have to realize on both levels, both sides are not going to solve the issue of environmental harm completely. The best thing we can do is have A, mitigation factors, or B, at least have some level of marginal change to make the world better. When we have this policy being passed, this allows countries to opt into or at least care more about the environment when they do trade. We are not absolutely killing the environment or for economic gain. We are explaining to you why environment is important, why the world is as in this specific time frame is so vulnerable to these environmental harms, and on all of these levels we explain to you why biodiversity is important. Therefore, because of how economic centric the world is today, we tell you that biodiversity isn't as important to a lot of these countries and a lot of these white countries as well, or the superpowers of the world. Through trade law is the only way there is some level of recognition through this existing harm, and that's why we can solve it. But secondly, then let's talk about the neo-colonialism argumentation which came out from side of opposition. They explained to us this is going to happen because of just the world's power dynamic which exists. Number one, Judge, we think that this is very important to realize that there are protectionism treaties existing already for these third world countries. This looks like your International Labour Organization, this looks like your CBD and the Nagoya Protocol explained by TIVA in first. We tell you on all of these levels, we mitigate the harm which opposition pushes to us, but importantly, we tell you that there's no harm caring about the environment at the same time when you care about the economy. In the 21st century, every country cares about the economy, every country cares only about the GDP and FDI. Without caring about biodiversity whatsoever, TIVA explains to you in first that the harm is irreversible. If they don't deal with this in second response, they can't take this debate from side of proposition. We propose.
Thank you. For the second rebuttal in the against argument, University of Maryland, you have 2 minutes.
I think the opposition for their argument, and indeed it's true that international agreements say that states have sovereignty, say that states have a say in what happens to their natural resources. But judges, today only the Khan has actually engaged with the reality of how those relationships play out in the real world, where today the global north leverages its economic dominance over the global south, predicated on a justification of biodiversity protection. Another example we can look to is the Congo, specifically in Kahuzi-Biega National Park, where the indigenous Batwa people who have sustainable practices on the land have in the past decade been expelled, murdered, had their belongings taken from them by private security forces funded by German companies that support the national park. That park's funding comes from global north organizations like the World Wildlife Fund. They say that expelling and murdering indigenous people is justified by protecting lowland gorillas, despite the fact that those people pose no threat. Indeed, the African Commission on Human Rights in 2022 ruled that the Batwa's people's rights were violated by their land being taken. Yet, because Global North funders of the park, because Global North organizations that run these parks in the Global South haven't bought on, that decision by the court hasn't been enforced. Judges, our thesis is that yes, international agreements exist that promise rights of sovereignty and control over natural resources. But if we prioritize biodiversity protection, we're only perpetuating this existing neo-colonial relationship that scholars have identified as green colonialism. Finally, the pro in today's debate has wholly conceded and failed to engage with our second argument from the first speech, which is that economic development is necessary to protect biodiversity. That was our Kakar article, which talked about how their analysis of 87 developing countries found that economic development helped create technologies that protect species. We are already seeing biodiversity losses. We need to further develop the tools necessary to protect those species. That requires innovation and new technology. Thank you.
Thank you. At the last stage for the conclusions, starting with the position in favor, University of Malaya, you have 2 minutes.
Before I start, can I just recheck if I'm audible?
You are.
All right, cool, thanks. starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. A very good day, I bid to everyone present here. Our learned opposition can give us multiple examples of green colonialism, but they fail to understand that our model has some kind of pre-existing protectionist mechanism for these vulnerable states. Insofar as opposition fails to provide any form of alternative to provide these vulnerable communities in their model, they cannot take this debate. What are the impacts that we have mechanized to you? 3 things. Number 1, we tell you that we prevent irrecoverable harms towards wildlife. Secondly, we tell you we alleviate unjust encroachment on indigenous lands by the opt-out mechanism in our world. And thirdly, we have sufficiently proven to you why our model is the best at preventing overexploitation of natural resources. Op wants to push towards 2 main things today. Number 1, they want developing states to have autonomy over resources. And secondly, they want economic gains, which are extremely essential towards the development of these states. We tell you why our arguments around impacts are debate winning over 2 issues. Number 1, over the main clash or issue of like how you need autonomy over own resources, especially for these third world countries or developing nations. I think we have sufficiently proven to you why we have an opt-out mechanism. And insofar as the sovereignty and autonomy of this developing states is threatened, right? Especially in regards to resources utilized to be engaged in trade. We already sufficiently proven to you why states can simply opt out via the principle of partial ratification. We have proven to you as to why we will also protect these indigenous lands and local communities, because these countries can simply opt in to convention and treaties or articles of these conventions to protect their livelihoods, especially the livelihoods of these vulnerable communities. And this would allow the governments of these states to fulfill their social contract duty to opt in and protect their marginalized communities. But on the second issue of the prioritization of economic gains, I think our learned opposition never recognized as to why it's true and why it's extremely important, and they never defended why it's justified to have the harms that we push, which include habitat destruction and the symmetrical harm of unjust encroachment of these indigenous lands. And even if it's true, right, I think opposition is extremely convenient in disregarding all these harms. Extremely proud to propose.
Thank you for your submission. To hear the conclusion of the against position, University of Maryland, you have 2 minutes.
Only one side in today's debate has actually engaged with the reality of how international relations, when it comes to protecting biodiversity, play out. We have shown that the predicate of justification for protecting biodiversity, putting it first, is only used by the global north to perpetuate neo-colonial relationships. Again, judges, the pro talks about how important it is to have local say. But what we have shown is that when global north organizations use their money, use their power to dominate places like Kahuzi-Biega National Park in the Congo, they prevent local autonomy from actually being asserted. They only lead to indigenous communities being exterminated. Judges, the pro can continue to talk as much as they want about establishing local control, but the only way you do that is by empowering the global south economically. That is our thesis. No more green colonialism, and allow local communities to actually control what is done with their local resources. Additionally, one of the most important arguments in the round that the pro continues to engage with at a substantive level is that when it comes to the sequencing of prioritization, economic gains have to come first. You have to develop the technologies to protect biodiversity. You have to have economic gains to actually establish sovereignty for local communities to have the financial leverage to combat the global north. That is the reality. That is based in scholarship, and it's based in how these relationships actually play out in the real world. The pro has largely relied on an abstracted understanding. They state the words that are in the text of international agreements, but they don't analyze how those agreements play out in the real world. Judges, what we have shown you today is that putting biodiversity first, or at least saying we do, will only continue to enforce these power dynamics. We have to empower local communities economically, allow them to control their resources, to actually develop the tools necessary to protect our planet. Thank you.
Thank you for your submission. You can all now relax. You are no longer in the graded part of the debate. Of course, as always, you know, as now is it already a day 3 of the group phase, that after a debate, there is a possibility for feedback on how you experienced the debate, how was the research, and perhaps the topics itself as well. Of course, you will also receive the feedback from the judges. They have 2 to 3 business days to review the match, submit their scorecards, and our teams, once we confirm the scores, will inform you and announce the results through the social media channels as well as through emails. And but you already know all that, so I won't keep you long. I would first like to pass the floor to University of Malaya, but as it is full season here, I will also pass the floor to Ms. Lal to give you the floor for the feedback on the debate, the match, and the topic.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for your wonderful arguments. We'll be starting off with the review of the debate. So starting off with Mr. Singh from the University of Malaya, how did you find the debate and research?
Hi guys. First of all, congratulations for completing round 3. I thought that this debate was very interesting. I was quite interested in what trade law was and how the environment is actively part of trade laws. So the research part was quite tedious actually, because there was hundreds of conventions around which we could pick from. So it was quite a tedious process, but I think both teams, both the proposition and opposition, managed to do it very well, and I'm happy with my team's performance.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Could we hear from Mr. Hale from the University of Maryland?
Yeah, absolutely. We really enjoyed this debate. Definitely echo that there are hundreds of conventions. It was, I think, the most amount of research that we had to do. I think what we didn't want to happen is we didn't want to just have 2 ships passing in the night where it's like prioritize biodiversity versus prioritize the economy. And I think that didn't happen today. I think both sides really had really nuanced arguments that kind of got into the interplay between both those prioritizations, kind of what comes first. And I think it was a really good debate. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for that. Could we hear from Mr. Nathan, please?
Hello. First of all, congratulations everyone for completing round 3 as well. I think the entire process of research, if that's something I want to comment about, was pretty engaging. I think that's because of just the intersectionality of trade law and environmental law and why it's so deeply ingrained right now. So debating on either side would require you to kind of break that deadlock or intersectionality. So I think it's pretty interesting to kind of engage and intuitively think about it. So I enjoyed the process.
Awesome. And now, Ms. Liang, how did you find the debate?
So sorry, I just turned my video off accidentally. I thought the debate was, I guess I want to echo what Mr. Hale was saying, and that like this was very, very high engagement. I think the arguments from both sides were very nuanced. This was the debate that we had hoped would happen, because I think it is very frequent that 2 ships do pass in the night and you sort of miss the motion, you miss the clash. And I think the key clash here wasn't that the status quo is good versus the status quo is bad. We all agree the status quo is not good enough. The question is then like, what do we do about it and why and what particulars are there? And I think that's kind of where the real life discussion is happening, and that I was very, very pleased by.
Thank you so much. Can we hear from Mr. Chin Yi-wei? Perhaps if you've done this research before, feel free to share. Thank you.
All right. First thing I want to say is that thank you so much for this interesting round and congratulations on making it this far. The main thing I want to talk about this round is that I really like how both sides we argued on like how we should protect your most vulnerable communities, like your indigenous groups of people, because based on like our research when we were preparing for this motion is that we realized oftentimes all these international treaties and convention, they often lock out these vulnerable communities which they do not have any sort of protection mechanisms that are catered towards them. So I really appreciate how we dive in depth into like this particular area in this round.
Thank you. And now could we hear from Mr. Giver, please, from the University of Maryland?
Yeah, thank you so much, and congratulations to you all for making it to this round too. I had a lot of fun listening to everyone's arguments, and I was very impressed with everyone involved. And it's very clear that you all did a great job with your research when there was so much. I don't have too much more new commentary to add, just that I think at least I really enjoyed today's resolution in that I think doing some of the research, we were able to really grapple with some of the shortcomings of the current status quo of trade law. And I think that was definitely inspiring. And at least as someone interested in environmental law and economics, I think it's good that that I'm learning more about kind of how we need to do better.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And now could we please hear from Ms. Feinleb, who is the coach for the University of Maryland. Maybe if you could give a general feedback on how the team was or how the debate was. Thank you.
I think it was a very enjoyable debate to watch. I completely agree that the issues that each team engaged on were so much deeper than just what the surface level argument that could have been done based on this proposition. I think it was both teams had excellent points about protecting disadvantaged communities and the global South. I do think it was also so clear. The University of Malaya, your debate skills really shone in this. It was very very gratifying to have skilled opponents to really bounce off of. I think everybody did a great job.
Thank you so much to both teams. Now we will be moving on to the networking portion of the debate. So the first question is related to your legal careers. So I'm sure as law students, you've been exposed to various areas of law, even if you're still a first year. And so the first question is, do you have a preferred area of law that you're looking to work in? And yeah, so starting off with the University of Maryland this time, could we have Miss Liang, please?
Sure. So my hope is to do either international public law or something in the field of trade, actually. So like I used to work at a law firm supporting the International Arbitration Group, but every so often, because I was like I can read it right in Chinese, I would get traded off to help with the sanctions team, especially as like new sanctions from the US to China were emerging during the trade war. So that sort of started my interest. I went to law school sort of thinking that I would keep an open mind. So I'm taking coursework in like critical race theory as well as international empire and stuff like that, mostly to just sort of explore a little bit more. And then eventually I might be in academia, who knows?
Thank you so much. I'm sure you must have found the topic for this match and trade quite interesting. So thank you so much. Next up, could we have Mr. Chen Yiwei, please?
Personally, for me, I resonate with what our learner opponent has said to keep an open heart in law school, which I try on doing my best. But then personally, I think the main area of interest that I have right now is criminal law, and I aspire to be a criminal defense attorney one day, because in Malaysia, I think there are a lot of reforms where the area of criminal law needs, and I hope to contribute to that area. Like, for example, in Malaysia, we still have the death sentence, which is imposed onto people who are convicted of severe crimes, and I think like that is an essential area that we need to reform on.
Thank you so much and for sharing that about Malaysia. Now could we hear from Mr. Gaver, please?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I also see a lot of similarities. I am definitely not sure exactly what kind of law I want to practice. I am interested in international law, and also kind of like my colleague, am interested in public service and policy reform. And I think that sort of with everything going on now in the United States, it's a very kind of chaotic time to try to figure out the best path forward in a legal career. So I'm taking it day by day, and I'm sure I'll figure it out eventually.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Could we now hear from Mr. Nathan from the University of Malaya, please?
Yep. So up until now, I'm kind of also trying to keep an open mind in law school. I don't have a fixed preference or end goal of where I want to be. But from what I can see so far is I have certain inclinations, and I think currently I'm more inclined to do banking and finance instruments or banking laws. But also because of my huge passion for debate, maybe also like inclined onto public international laws and admin laws, etc. So still trying to keep an open mind. Things might change in the future, but so far I have these as prospectus.
Thank you. Could we now hear from Mr. Hale, please?
Yeah, I think also, still only my second year, so still figuring out my area of focus, though, has largely come to be civil rights litigation here in the United States. I'll be working with a local state ACLU this summer, working on a whole host of issues. Still figuring it out. I certainly have an interest in LGBTQ rights, in prisoners' rights, and particularly juvenile rights. Those have been three areas I've really enjoyed, but, we're all figuring it out.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Singh.
Hi. So my passion is to become a Formula One driver, as you can see from my t-shirt which I'm wearing. But in all seriousness, I also have my own inclinations in law school. As of right now, the goal is to venture into corporate law, maybe become in-house counsels for MNCs. That's the end goal much later in life. But as of now, I'm just working to get through my examinations and hopefully pass the whole thing with a great grade. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you to both teams. I'm sensing a wide range of areas that everyone wants to specialize in. Feel free to connect with each other on LinkedIn after the debate so you have connections in both countries. And now for the final question for the networking session, which is more related to the cultural events. So, if the opposing team were to visit your city or town, what cultural events would you invite them to attend? So, starting off with the University of Malaya this time. So, if the University of Maryland team were to come to Malaysia, what cultural events would you like them to attend? Starting off with Mr. Nathan, please.
Oh, all right. So, Malaysia is a extremely multicultural place, and we have a ton of events that happen due to the amount of races that we have. So we normally have Deepavali, or we have Chinese New Year celebrated here really greatly, or we also have Hari Raya. But I think a personal cultural event is like the Kuala Lumpur Cultural Night that happens at Lai, and I think that's a event I would definitely bring the University of Maryland.
Thank you so much. Could we hear from Mr. Gava, please? If the opposing team were to come to Maryland, what would you suggest?
Yeah, so thank you so much for the question. I would say if you were to come to Maryland or come to Baltimore, we'd definitely recommend that you come to an Orioles game. I'm not sure if you are big baseball fans, but it's very popular given that Baltimore is a smaller city and they don't have sort of a major sports team for every different sport. Baseball and football are very big here, and it's a lot of fun. Everyone gets dressed up in black and orange. You can have a hot dog, have a beer. It's a great time.
That sounds fun. Thank you so much. Could we hear from Mr. Chin Yue from the University of Malaya? Perhaps something different?
All right. So my home, although I live in KL right now, my hometown is originally in Penang, Malaysia, and I think the one most significant event or cultural event for Penang Nights is on the 8th day of Chinese New Year, where it's like it's the first day of Chinese New Year for like the Hokkien ethnic group of Penang. So we will have really grand celebrations, like we will have a lot of food that's served, and we'll have like street parades, we'll have a lot of things, because like most of this are done towards like worshiping your ancestor and the deities. So I think I would like to have our opponents or friends from University of Maryland to like engage in this cultural event, as it's a really interesting event.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Could we hear from Mr. Hale from the University of Maryland, please?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot to do around here. We're only like a 30-minute train ride from Washington, D.C., so you get all the huge sites. But one thing I want to plug for you, you may not know about, we have a nearby called the Maryland Renaissance Fair. So it's kind of like, they build a whole medieval town. There's people dressed up. They have fully staffed shops. I went last year for the first time. I dressed up as a witch. I look good. I promise you. It's a terrific time. Like, really just kind of be silly. There's great food. I saw a real joust Just not something you see every day. So it's kind of one of my favorite things I've experienced here because I'm not originally from Baltimore.
That does sound fun. Could we now hear from Mr. Singh, please, from the University of Malaya?
Hi. First of all, the Renaissance Week sounds amazing. I think I should go to US for that. Also, since Tiva already explained how we are very multiracial as a country, and he explained a lot of the cultural events which happen, I think also we should bring our friends from Maryland to this event called the Penang Cocktail Week, which is in Penang, where Kenneth is from. The reason why this is cultural is because on Cocktail Week, they have specific spices and cocktails made based on the food which those cultures have. So, for example, if you have nasi lemak, they have the coconut rice as a flavor with, I don't know how to explain it, but it gives you all that cultural flavor in a cocktail. And I think that's amazing. Penang is a great state also. I just came back from there on a holiday. So yeah, I can't wait to see y'all here after we connect on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much. That sounds really spectacular. And thank you for highlighting that. And lastly, could we hear from Miss Li Yang, please?
Sure. So, fun fact: I grew up in Hong Kong, and like my parents for some time lived in Kuala Lumpur as well, which is cool. But when I think about America and I think about all of the things that people get up to, like during spring break or whatever, sometimes there's like I think it's like really built in part of the culture to like retreat into nature. So yeah, even though we're in the East Coast and like it's not like California with the dramatic coast and so forth. We also have a lot of hiking in this area. So if you were to take just drive a little bit, maybe like an hour or so, you could go to Gunpowder State Park, and you can go kayaking there and do all sorts of outdoor activities. And like the natural beauty that's in this region is actually quite amazing. So you can go from like an urban sprawl area and then just drive 30 minutes and you'll be in the middle of the woods, and it's as if there is nothing, as if there were never people there except maybe the trail that the park rangers had like created. But that escape, I think, is a really important part of like what it's like to live in Maryland as well.
Lovely. Thank you so much to both teams for such an informative networking session. We've covered a lot of comprehensive activities. So hopefully if either team visits, you'll get to try one of these activities. And thank you once again for this debate. I'm handing the stage back over to Mr. Laurent to wrap it up, please. Thank you.
Yes, many thanks for this match. That was indeed very intense, and as well a lot of research. We saw that indeed you had to deal with a lot of conventions, and it's always the case when you deal with international trade law and indeed environmental topics as well. So yes, that was for us a pleasure as organizers to see the result of your research on this topic. So that was day 3. So that is accumulation of the 3 match will give the result of this group, and we need to process already still, some match from year 2 and year 3, and at the end it will be the ranking. These results will come to you in the mailbox first before we publish anything. Don't forget that even if you have had 3 match, then if you are among the 2 best teams of your group, you will have a 4th match. That will be the 8th of finals, round of 16. Then if you win that match, that will be at the end of April. There will be a break of 20-25 days, and in the middle we'll be organizing a networking session. You will be able to meet all the other teams who had as well all these match in the group phase, to network, to exchange experience, and as well we'll have some activities during that session. So we'll inform you about when this session will take place. But in any case, you will see it's a very different setting. So congratulations for all this work. It has been 5 weeks of research for all of you on all these topics. And yes, now it will be time for us to finalize everything before welcoming you to a larger session that we'll inform you about in a few days. So again, don't hesitate to connect on LinkedIn, and we will as well post the links of this match, because we can post as well match which already took place. During the last days we are not in perfect shape, so that's why we took a break. But in any case, many thanks. We keep contact, and don't hesitate to see what's happening for the other match. But I can tell you that from the first match to this match, we can observe that there have been a lot of improvements, and as well including feedbacks, etc. So congratulations from the side of the Coax Foundation. So that's all on our side. For us, organizers in Europe will finish the night. Many thanks as well to Miss Lal. For her in New Zealand it is 1 p.m. So many thanks for helping us all this match especially. And wish you a great, I would say, rest of the evening in the US, a great start of the day in Malaysia, and we keep in touch for the next days. So yes, during the next days you will see coming some emails from us. Many thanks. We keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done, everyone.
Thank you. Well done.